Hello viewers and welcome to this week's edition of Economics 101, a program that takes a closer look at the economy, also in relation with the National Development Strategy, one that we continuously track on this program. The many facets of this economy starts with the budgeting side of it, but we talk about the production of commodities, processing, as well as the manufacturing that then follows. These are critical components in sustaining an economy, and then comes the marketing of goods as well as commodities to the market. As you know, the market varies from local, regional, as well as international markets. As you know, Zimbabwe is rich in minerals, but remains an agro-based economy. But the question of the day today is, are we doing enough to market ourselves as a nation, as Zimbabwe? And in studio today, we are joined by Ms. Sithabile Hove, who is a marketing enthusiast as well as expert, as well as a brand manager, to help us unpack these and other issues. Sithabile, it's such a pleasure to have you in studio today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's get right into it. To begin with, as a marketing expert, can you say that as a country, we're doing enough to expose ourselves to the world in terms of this particular field that you are in?
There's so many more aspects that we can tap into, especially when I think around the digital aspect of marketing that we're in right now. I find that we're still so behind, and to me it's tragic because we don't need to be that far behind, with third world versus first world, for instance, but it doesn't mean that we have to be as far behind as we are. There's so many more platforms we could be tapping into to expose ourselves, and to just build more awareness around what it is that we are capable of as Zimbabweans and what it is that we have as a nation.
Absolutely, absolutely, because we are talking about a space in which perhaps not to mean to contrast, but we have ICT innovations, we have steps that even the second dispensation is taking with regards to some of the lines of marketing that are being taken by this Second Republic. Can you say that the government as well has a role to play? And if so, what can be done by the government in terms of marketing our country at large?
Oh, absolutely. I think the government has a role to play. I think in a lot of things, the government has allowed a voice, then I would say a private company that would be starting. So once you have the support of the government and the government is building awareness around a particular platform, they're louder, they have, a wider audience. I would say that you become more aware of the things that are going on once the government is talking about it. And also once the government decides to support, they invite you to more of these events, again, to speak more about what is important in the country and how we're working together to grow it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And what can be done with regards to the branding and marketing side by the government? And what do you feel is missing with regards to some of the steps that are being taken, particularly in the Zimbabwean space? And is there enough investment with regards to some of these projects or perhaps platforms that you speak of?
You know what, it's an interesting question. I find that in Zimbabwe in particular, we tend to talk about a specific brand as opposed to talking to branding overall, So if a brand is doing well, we'll start talking about the things that the brand is doing. The brand will then partner with the government on certain initiatives, but then what the public is seeing is that that brand is doing well. No one is seeing what work has gone into building that brand into what it is, which essentially is what brand management is. So if the government could talk more about that as a subject, maybe in universities or even as kids are growing up, they've done so well to talk about STEM, and ICT, but I don't really see that much being spoken about in terms of branding and marketing.
Yes.
I laugh with a few of my mates and we say, people seem to think that we're the coloring in department. So we're just coming in to fill in, there's not really any kind of special qualifications that are needed, and that we don't fit into these conversations, around things that are changing the economy and that could make it better.
Absolutely.
So if we had the government coming into schools and coming into universities and speaking publicly about what it is that branding is and why it's so important and how it's helped to build even the economy and the government and these brands that are making us better, it would really do a lot of service, I think, to marketers, to children, and to the growth of Zimbabwe as a nation.
Absolutely. Speaking from your point of view, we are talking about a brand manager.
Yeah.
So Brand Zimbabwe, say you're given the reins.
Yes.
We are encompassing or incorporating all these brands that are perhaps propelling the narrative of Zimbabwe at large.
Right.
And we are now giving you the project Brand Zimbabwe. What is the first step that you will take with regards to coloring in, so to speak, for Zimbabwe?
So my first thing is to sit down with the most important decision makers and ask them, what do you feel makes brand Zimbabwe? What are the things that you would like us to be known for? You know, because with anything, I think with the personality, with the business, you know, with the family, there are certain things that you end up being known for. And for some reason, these things can be negative, and people tend to focus on the negative. So with us, we want to understand what are the important things about Zimbabwe that we want to be known for. Because as a brand manager, my job is to highlight the positives, you know. So I want to know, I would start with the top 3. So usually what we do is we do 3 to 5. You know, because they're the easiest to remember. You don't want a long list, because you can have a large laundry list of what you think you're doing well. What do we want to be known for? Once we've identified what those 3 things are, we're now going to sit down and get into the strategy of how we execute a project of building that awareness around those important factors.
Absolutely, absolutely. And taking a look at that, we'll talk about the broadness of marketing and perhaps how we can particularly focus on some of the things that you particularly tackle within your space and scope as a brand manager as well as a marketing specialist. But for now, we're going to take a short break here on Economics 101. We are here with Miss Sithabile Hove, who is a marketing expert as well as enthusiast. Please do stay tuned. This is Economics 101. We'll be right back. All right, thank you viewers for staying with us. Economics 101, your program that keeps you up to speed with Vision 2030 as well as tracking the National Development Strategy 1. Today we are talking all things branding, a topic that specifically excites me, and to unpack this and more with regards to this topic, I am joined in studio by Miss Sithabile Hove. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Economics 101.
Thank you, Curtly.
Yes, and let's talk about this field that we occupy. It's marketing, branding. I do know that you also do communications. This is a broad aspect. Do you see yourself as more of a jack of all trades, or there's a particular aspect of the field that you particularly specialize in and many are forced to specialize in?
So I would say that what I specialize in is what we call customer experience. You know, I love customer experience management because it's something that gets you to be, you know, it helps a business build loyalty around their particular brand. You know, so that experience comes right down from how the employee is experiencing the business to how the customer is experiencing the business. Yes. Because you find at the end, once you get to the end user, if the employee is having a shoddy experience, they will transfer that on to the customer. You know, so it's, you know, my job to really make sure I understand what's going to build a healthy environment to make that employee have a great experience, so they transfer that onto a beautiful customer experience. So what we call it customer delight. You know, again, I'll just bring in the aspect of that coloring in department again, because it sounds like a simple thing to do. Let's make customers happy. But in order to do that, you really have to understand what is it that they like. Yeah. So I'll give you a simple example, like a supermarket. You don't notice how different you feel when you walk into a supermarket that's poorly lit. The floors are not looking very dirty. There isn't any music playing. The produce that's supposed to be fresh is not looking fresh. As opposed to you walk into one, it smells fresh. It's air conditioned. You know, you're finding everything easily. The employees are smiling at you. It's easy for you to transact when you get to the till, and then you walk out with your bags happy.
So that all plays an integral part with regards to the full-on experience.
Yes, absolutely.
And it starts from the grassroots level, like you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something we've never thought about, and I do think our viewers are in for a delight, like you say. And we are also looking and tackling issues to do with the full operations that have to do with the experience.
Right.
We want to start from the back, so I guess from the bottom up, as they would say. We are talking about a situation where I think you tackle issues to do with customer experience management.
Right.
Yes. And are we going to say that if we are talking about this from a marketing perspective, does everybody who has who then gets the end, or who's the end user, that is the customer, does it always have to begin from the employee, or at times it just has to do with operations that are happening perhaps in an establishment that is already there and perhaps not too well off with regards to operations?
Well, within the operations, who's running the operations? It's an employee, right? So for me, it always starts from the back. So, you know, I spoke earlier on about digital, right? So even when you have a digital experience, there's an experience that you're having going through it as a customer. You know, so if I go onto an e-commerce website, for instance, was it easy for me to find the page? Was it easy for me to find the product? Was it easy for me to then make my purchase? Was it easy then for me to communicate what time I was going to get my delivery? All of that goes into the employee who's running it and also the person who builds the system. So we're going into AI, right? So AI, you know, the belief is that all of, you know, human beings will not be useful anymore, right? But the person who's building the, you know, that AI and sort of intelligence has to understand those human aspects that come into it and what it is that someone is looking for when they get onto a particular website.
Absolutely.
So to me, you can't separate the two. You can't say it's just operations, so the end user is not really going to be interested in the experience, or they're not going to be interested in the employee experience. If that employee does not get into the operations and has not, you know, really been inducted well and understood what that experience is that the end user is supposed to have, they will not execute their duties well in order to have a finished product and experience that's great for the customer.
Absolutely. And how important is artificial intelligence with regards to the future of customer relations, the future of marketing, the future of even some of the branding aspects that we'll be tackling?
It concerns me when it comes to customer relations, I must be honest, because you remove that human aspect when it's AI. You know, so I find that very concerning. I also find it concerning that, yes, indeed, there will be some of those jobs that will be lost, you know, and like I said, some of my job is to be a problem solver, and part of problem solving is also then getting those jobs for people in sales and in marketing, because I'd like to see that, you know, that aspect, that field growing. So I am a little bit worried about AI. I can't say I'm the biggest fan. I'm an impatient person, so I like things to happen quicker, so I'm excited about that, you know, that things will be moving faster and quicker. But I am concerned, you know, I do feel a lot of things in terms of innovation and human aspect, they do require us human beings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And a quick one. We're going to look at your career as a marketer. Do you operate in a vacuum, or you have an organization or some sort? And what is your relationship with the central government? And is there somewhere where you meet to discuss, let's say, a national marketing policy, or something that integrally includes every marketer and also enhances the narrative of our nation, Zimbabwe?
So I can say to you that right now there is an organization that I'm working for, and I also do consult in my personal capacity. And I think it's important. You cannot operate in a vacuum. You know, I think no man is an island. It's important for you to keep, you know, getting into these experiences with different marketers, because there's always so much for you to learn. You know, one thing I always say is you must never arrive. You know, so if you get to a point where you think you know everything, you're in a lot of trouble. So for me, yes, there is a body that I do work with. That we share ideas about marketing, and we're actually constantly discussing the future of marketing within our country, because we're concerned, you know, we're learning all these international aspects. What are we doing about it at home? Because we must always start at home.
Okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I believe that.
Thank you. And yes, we'll be tracking more about that conversation. For now, we'll take a short break. Economics 101 is here on ZBC TV. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, viewers. This is the third and final segment of Economics 101, tracking all things to do with marketing as well as communications in the space of a business here in Zimbabwe. We are looking at issues from a national scale. Now, we were having a conversation with Ms. Sithabile Hove, who is a brand manager as well as a marketing expert. Thank you so much for staying with us once again.
Thank you, Kirtley.
Yes, so we are tracking issues to do with the marketing aspect of our country. And as we go, we want to tackle perhaps and just have an appreciation of the importance of digital media with regards to enhancing the narrative of branding Zimbabwe. How important is digital media in this generation and era?
Digital media is extremely important. You know, we live in an age where the Gen Zs are really the ones that are coming up in the economy and the jobs that we have. And a lot of them are constantly on these devices. So we want to have an influence on them, on how they're thinking, on what their views are of the country, because one day they will be running it, and even as they get into these jobs, they are the ones essentially running the country. So we want them to have, a great understanding of how important the issues are that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely. And I think, you don't find a lot of them sitting in a television watching the news. You don't see them lifting up newspapers anymore. It's archaic to them. For them, it's literally social media that they spend their days on. So it's very important for us to make sure that we have good messaging on the social media platforms that they spend their days on. We want them to have a keen interest. For instance, in any kind of politics, finance, whatever's going on in the economy, we want them to ask questions. We want them to understand what's going on and not to just wait, for others who are supposedly older or elderly to be explaining things to them or to be running things. We want them to have a voice.
Yeah.
So, that digital space is extremely important for us to penetrate and not wait for others to have a voice for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's talk about this voice, because we want to know whether individuals like yourselves are also incorporated within some of the national decisions, or are brand managers, are marketers, or are individuals who are within your space only occupying the corporate space and not some of the national offices. How best can you address that issue?
You know what is interesting? I was actually on TikTok the other day, and there was a lady talking about networking. And she just said, as you go into the different aspects of your life, you shouldn't think of networking as an event. Think of it as an ongoing thing. So because we're in the corporate space, we still tell ourselves it's important for us to engage on a national level, because we don't live in a bubble. Everything that happens in the economy affects us as a business that's in any kind of corporate space.
Yes.
And also, as I said, as you're going into the different schools and wanting to engage with the kids who are going to be growing up in Zimbabwe, and leaving or coming back, we want them to also understand what's going on in Zimbabwe and how we can better our country that we're living in. So for us, we engage with the national companies and just with people who are developing Zimbabwe.
Yes.
On a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
We make sure that we are communicating with them as well.
Some of these higher offices.
Yes,
yeah.
of course, because we want to understand what they think about branding, first of all, what they think about our business, and then for myself as a brand manager, I want them to understand why my branding and why branding in general is important not only to the corporate that I work with, but why it's important on a national level and what we can do for each other, in this economy. So for instance, if I were to be engaging with someone in a national space who makes those decisions, it's important for me to understand that I'm with you and I want to be part of these decisions as well. And I also want to be part of the branding of it so that it has that positive voice, when any of us are speaking to any individuals that are within the spaces that we work in.
The power of networking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes. And from my knowledge, I'm going to go a little bit unorthodox as we go on and wind up this conversation.
Sure.
You are a fitness enthusiast, but we also have an appreciation in Zimbabwe that we have potentially viable areas within many of our provinces that can be developed into hiking as well as fitness paradises. Yet as a marketer, we have not seen efforts around that to try and market these picturesque and mountainous outdoor areas as resorts or even just as maybe gymnasiums.
Right.
How best can we do that? Because we're integrating two of your very key interests.
Yeah.
How best can we have that as Zimbabwe also to push the narrative of some of our tourism?
So for me, one of the most important things to do would be to get people who are already in a fitness space to market those areas. So for instance, there was a time when we went through COVID, right? And a lot of people, we couldn't go to gyms anymore. So people used that as an excuse to not work out. To me, it wasn't an excuse. You could do home workouts, right? And even now, if you can't afford to go to the gym, you can do a home workout. So I think it needs the people who are already in the fitness space to go out on travels, you know, to go to these places that are mountainous, you know, and beautiful and good for exercise, and post those videos, because they tend to only post the videos when they're in the gym. You know, but if you can kill two birds with one stone, you're showing that fitness is great for your body, for your mind, you know, for your spirit, and you're also showing that fitness can be done anywhere and also in these beautiful resorts. So even when you go on a vacation, you don't have to miss out on the fitness. You can have fun because you're exploring our beautiful country and you're getting to see, you know, the vast and beautiful landscapes that we have, while you're also getting some calories, burning some calories, you know, and building your fitness. So I think what the important thing to do is to get people who are already in that fitness space to start talking about that, and for marketers to start asking the right questions to those guys, you know, about where it is that you're working out, what you do on your holidays, and what you can tell us more about these resorts that have these areas where you can go hiking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Many of the people who will be watching us here on Economics 101 are business people, are in the corporate space, but just to emphasize the importance of health and staying fit with regards to the everyday life.
It's so, so important. You know, I think it's something that, you know, it makes your mental health much better. We're talking a lot about that, you know, especially it's enjoyable to hear it on the radios and, you know, just in our spaces as people who are in corporate, that it's important for you to work out. You know, it's not necessarily just to lose weight. It's to have more of a sound mind. You make better decisions, you know, when your mind is healthy. You're able to live longer. You don't have, you know, as soon as you become a grandparent, you don't have people having to wheel you around. You're fit, you're active, you're able to contribute, you know, to conversations. It's an important thing for everybody, not just people who want to lose weight.
Absolutely. And Ms. Sithabile, as we wind up, your parting words for those watching the program, any words of encouragement to the fellow women who walk and talk and also dominate male-dominated fields?
You know, I would say to you 100%, you have to keep going. You know, you're always going to face disappointment. There's an interesting conversation I had the other day with a headmaster, and he said, I've noticed in some schools, you know, they don't give children the opportunity to fail. And when you get older and you get into corporate, you now are a disaster when you experience one form of failure because you've never experienced failure in your life. So allow yourself to fail. You know, I would say that. Don't allow yourself to be intimidated, you know, and I think these male-dominated spaces are now, some of them are not even being called that anymore because women have really made their mark and stepped into them. You know, so I would say be authentic, be dedicated, which is again why I think, you know, being athletic is important, because it shows you an immense amount of discipline. And when you work and you're in corporate and you're building strategies and you're trying to improve the country that you live in, you have to have an immense amount of discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So be authentic and lead the charge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Be authentic and lead the charge. You heard it here first on Economics 101. We were joined by Mrs. Sithabile Hove, who is a brand manager as well as an expert with regards to marketing. Such a pleasure to be having you in studio. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Kurtley. It really has been an absolute pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We wish you all the best. And yes, this has been Economics 101, a jam-packed session with regards to everything branding Zimbabwe, and also more information as well as a knowledge on the issue of branding, marketing and communications here on Economics 101. And of course, we are coming to you from ZBC TV. From me, Kurtley Gwindi, the crew behind the scenes, and everybody here at our Pocket Hill studio. It is a very pleasant viewing, and God bless Zimbabwe.